Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unraveling one of the most profound and honestly kind of mind-blowing mysteries left on the map. I want you to imagine a place on Earth, right this very second, that is completely disconnected from the digital age, global trade, and modern medicine. A place where the inhabitants have violently and successfully defended their borders from outsiders for literally centuries. We're looking at North Sentinel Island and a modern dilemma that's about to seriously test the limits of human rights, isolation, and government policy. Okay, let's dive into this. To truly grasp the gravity of North Sentinel Island, we really have to look at the extremes people will go to just to reach it. Satan's last stronghold or the ultimate sanctuary? Those are the exact, dramatic words penned back in 2018 by a 26-year-old American missionary named John Allen Cho. He wrote this in his diary right before he attempted to make illegal contact with the island's completely isolated inhabitants, all driven by this intense desire to convert them to Christianity.
The stakes of approaching this island, they are literally life and death. Cha actually paid two local fishermen 25,000 rupees just to bypass the naval patrols and ferry him close to the shore. On November 15th, during his very first approach, a young boy from the tribe shot a metal-headed arrow that pierced the Bible Cha was holding right against his chest. I mean, what an incredibly clear warning, right? But despite that, Cha returned. On November 17th, he instructed the fishermen to leave without him, and the very next day, those exact same fishermen watched in horror as the islanders dragged and buried his body on the beach. Indian authorities ultimately had to completely abandon efforts to retrieve his remains. The risk of further violence was just way too great.
Section 1. The Forbidden Island.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is understanding why this relatively small 60 square kilometer patch of land in the Bay of Bengal is the subject of such intense, fatal conflict. And why is it so fiercely guarded by an entire modern nation-state? Well, it's all about perfect geographical and cultural isolation. North Sentinel is part of the Andaman Islands archipelago. It's totally enveloped in this dense tropical rainforest canopy and ringed by protective coral reefs, which makes access physically incredibly difficult. It's home to the Sentinelese tribe, who have this well-documented, centuries-long history of violently rejecting virtually all outside contact. So, to protect both the tribe and, honestly, foolish adventurers, the Indian Navy and Coast Guard enforce a strict maritime perimeter.
Section 2. Who are the Sentinelese?
If they're so fiercely isolated, what do we actually know about the people living under that jungle canopy?
Well, the Indian government officially classifies the Sentinelese as a PVTG. That stands for a particularly vulnerable tribal group. This is a special classification reserved for groups with pre-agricultural levels of technology, extreme isolation, and incredibly fragile populations. The Sentinelese are widely considered by anthropologists to be one of the absolute last uncontacted peoples on the entire planet. And their lifestyle? It is a fascinating window into the deep past. They're absolute hunter-gatherers, relying on bows, arrows, and spears. Because of this extreme isolation, their language is completely unclassified and undocumented. It's actually mutually unintelligible even to neighboring indigenous groups like the Jarawa. Now, while they don't practice agriculture or traditional metallurgy, they are amazingly resourceful. Back in 1981, a massive cargo ship called the MV Primrose ran aground on their reef. The Sentinelese brilliantly scavenged the metal, cold forging it to make heavier, much sharper arrowheads and adze blades. Today, they sustain a population estimated somewhere between 50 and 200 individuals, entirely on local seafood, wild pigs, and native fruits.
Section 3. The Shield of Law.
So, keeping the modern world out of a 60 square kilometer island takes some immense legal and physical barriers. So, the crucial point here is the number 5. This represents the strict 5 nautical mile exclusion zone that forms a massive buffer around North Sentinel Island. No one, and I mean no tourist, no researcher, absolutely no fisherman, is legally allowed to cross this invisible line in the ocean. It's constantly patrolled by the Indian Navy and Coast Guard to ensure absolute, airtight enforcement.
The real legal teeth behind that exclusion zone, that comes from the 1956 Regulation for the Protection of Aboriginal Tribes. This regulation officially established North Sentinel as a strict tribal reserve. It basically enforces this concrete, hands-off, eyes-on policy. Unauthorized entry isn't just frowned upon, it's a serious criminal offense that'll land you strict fines and real prison time.
And this brilliantly illustrates the bizarre duality of the Andaman archipelago today. Just look at this contrast. You have 29 other Andaman islands where the Indian government actually lifted restrictions through 2022 specifically to boost global tourism. We're talking inviting foreign super yachts and thousands of visitors. But for North Sentinel Island, it remains entirely locked down under the protected area permit.
So you've got booming tourism everywhere else and absolute forbidden isolation for the Sentinelese.
Section 4. The threat of contact.
So why is the Indian government so unbelievably adamant about enforcing this extreme isolation? Well, history and human behavior show us exactly why. Way back in 1858, a British penal colony introduced syphilis, measles, and influenza to the Andamans, just devastating the indigenous populations of the other islands. Contact, quite literally, equals death. Fast forward to today, and the pressure just never stops. In 2006, 2 fishermen were killed by the tribe after their boat anchor failed and they drifted into the shallows. And incredibly, get this, in early 2025, an American YouTuber was arrested after he bypassed security, sailed to the island, blew a whistle, and actually left a can of Diet Coke and a coconut as an offering. People, the outside world is constantly trying to pry this door open.
But prying that door open, it would trigger an absolute apocalypse. As noted by M. Sasikumar from the Anthropological Survey of India, the government actually used to drop off coconuts in the 1990s as friendly gestures, but they stopped. Why? Because of the harsh biological reality. The Sentinelese have zero immunity to modern pathogens. A common cold, an influenza virus carried by some well-meaning YouTuber or a missionary, it could literally wipe out their entire civilization in a matter of weeks. No exaggeration.
Section 5. The census dilemma.
Here's the modern rub. While the island is isolated, it is technically part of India, and modern bureaucracies absolutely love their data. The big looming conflict right now is the 2027 Indian National Census. It poses this massive, practically unanswerable question. How on earth does a modern state count an uncontacted tribe? In the past, officials would literally just sit in a boat offshore and count the people standing on the beach through binoculars. I mean, in 2011, this offshore guesstimate put the population at just 15 people. But as 2027 approaches, officials are demanding real, accurate solutions.
So naturally, a high-tech debate has erupted. On one side, some officials are proposing using drones and high-resolution satellite imagery to scan the island. But on the flip side, experts like Jonathan Mazur from Survival International are warning of some severe risks. First off, the Sentinelese live under a ridiculously thick rainforest canopy, which makes aerial counts highly inaccurate anyway. Furthermore, imagine buzzing low-flying drones over an isolated tribe. A tribe that famously fired arrows at rescue helicopters after the 2004 tsunami, by the way. It wouldn't just feel deeply intrusive, it would likely cause widespread, terrifying panic.
Let's move to and see how this builds into a much larger philosophical argument. Manish Chandy, a former member of the Andaman and Nicobar Tribal Research Institute, argues that trying to do a census is just entirely pointless. He hits the nail on the head here. The bureaucratic desire to put a number on a spreadsheet should never, ever supersede the fundamental need to protect the tribe's isolation, their reef, and their very existence.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. As we map every single inch of the globe and connect every human being through the internet, how do we treat those who actively, violently reject our version of progress? Is the ultimate human right for the Sentinelese simply the right to be left entirely alone, just uncounted and uncontacted? It's a profound ethical dilemma where modern statecraft crashes headfirst into ancient isolation. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, I really encourage you to keep questioning the boundaries of our hyper-connected world.